the ice to the hardwood we go. It's playoff action on this Friday. Quadruple header
it's good.
in the National Hockey League.
Yep.
Triple header in the National Basketball Association, including a game. And I'm really excited to break down with Donnie, the only game we have out east tonight, game number 3 in Indianapolis between the Pacers and the Bucks.
Beautiful.
Not because of how the game might look, but because of when the game starts. 4:30 p.m. Central Time tip in Indy. We'll get to it in just a moment. But we start with a series tied at 1-1. The Clippers, without Kawhi Leonard, win game number 1 shorthanded. The Clippers get Kawhi Leonard back, and Luka Doncic goes off in game number 2 in Los Angeles for the Mavericks to even up the series at 1 game all. Now we change venues. We go to Dallas for the first time, and the Mavs booked as a 4.5-point home favorite. Total continues to work its way up. We had a graphic earlier this morning at 210. There it is. We're up by 3 points.
Yeah.
It's 213 tonight, DRS, in Dallas.
Yeah, and it should be that way, too, because here's what we're trying to decide. And also, just getting back to the framework of this series, I think coming into we both agreed that the Dallas Mavericks were probably the better team. And also, you have the benefit of the doubt by saying to yourself, we don't know when Kawhi Leonard, if Kawhi Leonard, I should say, is coming back in the series. Game number 1, I thought that would be, not a walk in the park is unfair. It's still a road basketball game in the playoffs, but a victory here for the Mavericks. That turned into a loss. And then by our surprise, you figure like, okay, well, Kawhi's got an extra couple days to rehab, and we won't see him for game number 2, or at least when the series gets tied up. Kawhi Leonard shows up at shoot-around, Ben. Kawhi Leonard is in the starting lineup and playing major minutes. This could have got quickly away from the Mavericks, where you might have returned home to Dallas 2-0, where they would have been 0-2. But a nice performance, particularly on defense, for the Dallas Mavericks in game number 2, which now affords them to be the favorite at game number 3. But here I go with this. I do think the Dallas Mavericks win this series, but I don't know about this, 4.5-point favorite now for the Mavericks, because you're still in that realm where if you think the Clippers can win, fantastic, you're going to bet them, of course. But even if they lose and you think it's going to be a close game, 4.5 points is a pretty good number to have back. And Kawhi Leonard, coming back after missing 8 games down the stretch in the regular season, missing game number 1, plays a lot of minutes. We haven't heard anything to the contrary, Ben, that, oh no, that knee swelled up again. We don't know if he's available for game number 3. So I'm actually expecting a better effort out of Kawhi Leonard in game number 3 than even game number 2. I'm rooting for the Mavericks in this game, but to be honest, I'm a little bit nauseous of that 4.5 and betting it, going like, oh no, I knew this was going to happen. The Clippers are full gas here, and they're getting points. This is the way I should be going. Rooting for the Mavericks, but that 4.5 points looks to me like it might be a good deal for the other side.
Yeah, Dallas as a home favorite throughout the entirety of this season. Of course, first home playoff game in the postseason, 15-13 against the spread. The Clippers, one of the worst underdog teams in the NBA, 7-12 against the number, not booked as a dog all that often throughout the regular season, and were the home favorite except for game number 1. But in game number 2, they were that home favorite side. Luka Doncic, 32 points in game 2, 33 points in the opening game of this series. Points prop tonight, 33.5. But here's my favorite Luka Doncic wrinkle for this game. 3-point prop, 4.5. When you look at the game log for Luka, it's much like how we broke it down for Joel Embiid yesterday. The volume is there, and Joel Embiid made 5 of his 7 threes a night ago. I don't need Luka Doncic at 50%. I don't need him even better than 50%. 14 threes in game 2 attempted against L.A. He made 5 over this number. 12 threes attempted in game number 1. He made 4. The volume is there for Luka Doncic. I go over 4.5 made threes. And by the way, when you look at this series overall, we expect it to be competitive, tied at 1 game apiece. Of course, this is the 3rd playoff matchup between the Clippers and the Mavericks in the last 5 years. Dallas now, 4.5-point home favorite tonight, minus 164, this series outright price. Ultimately, do you think Dallas wins this series and advances in the second round?
Yeah, I bet them to win the series here a little bit. If you would have told me before the series, no Kawhi Leonard in either game, I'd probably say it was still coming back 1-1 to Dallas, even though Kawhi Leonard has now played in game number 2, and they lost that game, still tied 1-1. I'm not losing any sleep here over that. I think the Dallas Mavericks win. But also, take a look at some of the points props here on the FanDuel Sportsbook. You're getting some balance here, Ben, by the way. Forget about looking at the superstars from a Dallas side. Look at the Clippers side. Kawhi Leonard, 22.5 points. Paul George, 20.5 points. James Harden, 17.5 points. But the guys that I look forward to is like Russell Westbrook coming off the bench, only 7.5 points. On the road, you need those bench guys to come in and give you support. It can't just be all in the All-Stars here. So I look at Russell Westbrook at 7.5 as a decent look. And also, Zubac has had a decent series, 12.5. But if I'm looking and saying, one guy doesn't play well, it's Paul George, I don't think they can win this game.
Right.
Paul George has to get to that 20-point number for them to have a chance for me, Ben.
Absolutely so. So 2 of the 3 games feature a series that is tied at 1 game all as we change venues. The only one that is not, That's in Phoenix tonight. The Suns down in that 0-2 hole against the Minnesota Timberwolves, but the odds makers at FanDuel expect Phoenix to bounce back. 4.5-point home favorite, total at 208. Donnie, the Suns need to win this game. We know that, of course, down 0-2 in game number 3 back on their home floor. Will they and can they cover as a 4.5-point home favorite?
56% of the tickets are coming in on the Minnesota Timberwolves, so a lot of love there. And also take a look at that 4.5 number, which does seem interesting because we just talked about a game with a 4.5. But I'm going to be true again. I was wrong with Cleveland going on the road, and I'm saying to myself, well, I saw what I saw the first 2 games. I don't know if they can score, or the Orlando Magic, over 100 points. Easily surpass that here. And this is one of those games where, again, even though the Los Angeles Lakers didn't win the game yesterday against the Denver Nuggets, you're still going to have a competitive game in this. And also, we've talked about this so many times. Where does Phoenix go from here if they actually get swept out by the Minnesota Timberwolves in round number 1 with 3 guys that are probably going to wind up in the Hall of Fame when it's all said and done? That's not a great look here. So that line at 4.5 is very strong and a good indicator for what we anticipate out of the Phoenix Suns. But having said that, all that good stuff here, I'm still going to ride with Minnesota because I think they're better. And defense always travels in any sport here. And the one thing we know, Minnesota plays great defense here, and they've really stymied the Suns. So who's going to step up on the Suns tonight to lead them to victory? I don't think it's going to be 30, 29, and 28 points. Somebody has to get to the 40s. Devin Booker for me.
Phoenix has not scored 100 points as a team. In fact, not more than 95 in this series. Home team total tonight in the Valley, 106.5. I actually like the total to the over. Game 1 went over.
So
they've given up a lot of points, but this total's dropping. 216 in game 1, 211.5 in game number 2, and it stayed well under. Again, Phoenix only scored 93. Minnesota scored 105. But why is this dropping if Phoenix needs it? They're booked as the favorite. Donnie shared. We have a lot of bets coming in on Minnesota. And yet the line is slightly working, at least add on that additional hook from 4 points to 4.5 now in favor of the Suns. We'll preview the game that tips at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time in Indianapolis. On the other side of the break, it's the Pacers and the Bucks in game number 3 with some best bets on that. A triple header of NBA playoff action in our final segment live right here on this Friday on the early line to wrap up this week and send you into a huge sports weekend all across the sports landscape. We'll get to the best bets in just a matter of moments, but still one final game in the triple header tonight. It's the only game in the Eastern Conference, and it starts early. 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time.
So good.
4:30 p.m. Central Time. That's the local tip time in Indianapolis. Donnie Rightside will be up for the entirety of it. You got to be, right?
Bell to bell.
Bell to bell.
Bell to bell tonight.
Yeah. 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time tip. Indiana and Milwaukee. The Pacers hosting the Bucks. It's a 6-point spread in favor of Indiana. Over under 223.5. Of course, no Giannis Antetokounmpo still here in game number 3. And the Pacers, the heaviest favorite of the 3 games tonight.
Yeah, one of the wild swings here that you're going to take a look at in a playoff series. In game number 1, it's like, oh, boy, look at this. Dame Lillard's back, and it's Dame time, and he doesn't even score a point in the second half. It doesn't matter. They roll Indiana, and Indiana isn't ready for prime time, even without Giannis, right? Game number 2, completely flipped that on its head. Giannis doesn't play in that game either. The Pacers were tremendous all the way through, even though you did have Dame Dash have a very good game there. Now we switch venues, game number 3, and what's the first thing, Ben, that sticks out? That is a strong number here for the Pacers at -6. So indicators say we do think the Pacers are going to win, obviously. But number 2, Giannis Antetokounmpo is not playing in this game. Otherwise, this will be much, much lower. So the question mark is going to be, when does Giannis return? Are we looking at this saying, well, let's get the win here. If we are Milwaukee, then we can sit him in game number 4 because at least we won't be tied, or worst case scenario, tied going back for game number 5. But I look at this overall and I say that 223.5. We saw the Pacers finally enter the playoffs in game number 2, Ben, which means comfortable on offense, guys are scoring, Halliburton's assisting, Siakam looks like he's ready for another championship run as if he was with the Toronto Raptors. I like what I see here. I think the tempo is going to be great. I think the 3-point shots are going down. Give me the over in this game. I'm a little bit leery of the 6 points here, to be honest, but I do think that game is going to have good flow. And it's not 235, 245 like we saw the Pacers in some of those games in the regular season. Give me the over 223.5. I think it makes some sense tonight.
And you see it's on the rise by 2.5 points from that opening number on this Friday morning. And here's the really fascinating fascinating thing. 230 was the number for game one, stayed well under. Indiana didn't even get to 95 points, only 94 in total. But they brought that pace in game number two, 125. It went over 223.5 by a pretty good margin. You would expect then, for all the odds fluctuations we have seen, DRS, for the odds makers to up that total. In fact, it opened lower, and the market has reset it to the same pregame number of where it was game two for game number three. I also like Indiana's team total over 113.5, the juice on the over at minus 120. All right, now time for a best bet on this Friday to send you in to your weekend. Before we say farewell for the week, before we say goodbye, it is time for bye, bye, bye. DRS, we've got a full Major League Baseball slate. We've got night number 2, rounds 2 and 3 in the 2024 NFL Draft. We've got 3 games in the NBA postseason. We've got a quadruple header of Stanley Cup playoff action. What gets your attention?
Normally, I would say, the best value on the board is Will Shipley, 35-1, to be the first running back off the board tonight, but we're not going to go there. It's Major League Baseball. It's Shohei Ohtani, exactly, at a plus 100 price to record an RBI tonight. Case in point, Ohtani's been dominant against right-handed pitching. And take a look here on the mound. Chris Bassett, the right-handed pitcher, going up against left-handed batters tonight, only a 12.5% K rate, which means that ball is going to be put in play tonight, and also an ISO power number of 217 and a weighted on base percentage of 468 against left-handed batters. Ohtani gets it done tonight, RBI or more at plus 100. Ben.
When you look at Shohei Ohtani in his Dodgers debut so far, 358. Third best batting average in all of Major League Baseball, as we shared earlier. 3 of the 4 best batting averages in all of the bigs hail from L.A. Mookie Betts leads them all. Will Smith, 4th best batting average. I'm going to the NFL draft, although I love Luka Doncic over 4.5 made threes tonight for Dallas against the LA Clippers. I love the total that we shared for that game in Indianapolis between the Pacers and the Bucks. I'm going to go to the NFL draft. And I think there's a couple of markets that still are ripe for the taking tonight, even though they are in pretty hefty minus money. Cooper DeJean to go in front of Kool-Aid McKinstry, the cornerback battle, minus 180, the odds working in his favor. The New England Patriots, who have the second pick in this second round, for that second draft pick to be a wide receiver, minus 210. Although hefty minus money, not terrible by NFL draft standards. I like both of those minus money plays. And if the minus money is a little bit too steep for your blood, how about plus money? Jatavion Sanders out of Texas to be the second tight end drafted. Brock Bowers went 13th overall last night to Las Vegas. Jatavion Sanders to be the second tight end drafted, plus 150. He's Donnie Rightside.
I am.
I'm Ben Stevens. Yes, he is. Hope you have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday.